threats, forced polygraphs, a gun, and a plan to kill Kid Cudi? These are allegations a jury just heard from Capricorn Clark, a former Diddy employee whose testimony could be key to proving the racketeering case against the hip-hop mogul. I'm going to speak with Law&Crime's reporter Elizabeth Milliner, who is inside that courtroom, to get the latest from what went down. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Well, in yet another big day of testimony, Sean Diddy Combs' former employee, Capricorn Clark, detailed a years-long pattern of alleged intimidation, violent outbursts, workplace abuse, all while working for the hip-hop mogul. And you know why her testimony is so important? Because Clark, who served as Combs' personal assistant and later as Cassandra Ventura's creative director, she arguably helps prove the racketeering charge in this case. More specifically, the underlying kidnapping, arson, maybe even forced labor underlying crimes that support the pattern of racketeering activity. Remember, prosecutors need to prove at least 2 underlying crimes to get the racketeering count. And what she apparently told these jurors was a lot. Even that Combs allegedly threatened to kill her, that she was forced to take a lie detector test. Okay, so we're going to break all this down, and to do that, I want to bring on now Law&Crime's Elizabeth Milliner, who's been inside that courtroom throughout the trial every day for every piece of testimony, and that includes the testimony of Capricorn Clark. Elizabeth, great to see you. So Capricorn Clark, we knew she was going to take the stand after the explosive testimony from Kid Cudi last week where he mentioned her. Before we even get into any specifics about her testimony, just remind our audience who she is exactly, how she even got involved with the Sean Combs enterprise, or that's more of a legal term if we're talking about a criminal enterprise, the Sean Combs business. How about that?
Well, Capricorn Clark is a name that we've been hearing about a number of times, right? We know that she had been working under Diddy's employment for a number of years, but she really kind of broke it down today just as far as what position that she had held at which time. So when she was first brought on to kind of the bad boy orbit, or the Diddy orbit, we could also say, this was around the 2004 to 2006 timeframe when Capricorn Clark was just Diddy's assistant at the time. But then after a couple promotions, she went on to become the director of marketing. She worked for the women's department of Sean John, and then she went on to global branding, and something that she had held as a position from about 2008 to 2012. Then there was some time lapse because a lot of things had happened after that time period. But around 2016 to 2018, she was rehired again, and she was hired actually this time to work as Cassie's brand director. So she had worked pretty much kind of from the ground up in a way, if you think about it, from just an executive assistant role all the way up until she was essentially just kind of monitoring or at least managing Cassie's brand, how she looked, how she would appear in press and red carpets, that sort of thing. And what else we know about Capricorn Clark is she was one of the other people, including Diddy and one of his security guards, who went over to Kid Cudi's house while Diddy was essentially looking for the rapper because he was in a relationship with Cassie around the time. And so this was a person that a lot of us have been anticipating her testimony today, because a lot of us just wanted to know what she had to say. We had already heard from Cassie, and we already heard from Kid Cudi last week, and now we're hearing from Capricorn Clark. So she's really kind of tied into just different orbits or different tangles of the web within Diddy's orbit, I should say.
Hey, I want to take a quick minute to thank Upside for sponsoring our coverage of Sean Diddy Combs' trial. Now, Upside is amazing. It is a free app that gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries. I pump my gas, I can use Upside. I go out to lunch, I can use Upside. Maybe I get something at a convenience store, I can use Upside. And why not get cash back when doing all these things, right? And yes, this is actual, real cash back. It's money that appears in your Upside app that you transfer right into your bank account. So once you have the free Upside app, you claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. You pay as usual using a debit or credit card. You follow the steps on the app, you get paid. So to find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on screen, and make sure to use our promo code LCSidebar. You'll get a special one-time offer of 35 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. That's promo code LCSidebar for a one-time special offer of an extra 35 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. And my understanding is that she starts her testimony by telling the jury that, right from day one of her employment, Combs threatened her life. And I think this has something to do with because she had worked for Suge Knight in the past, who's a big rival, by the way, of Diddy, if anybody doesn't know.
I know, if people don't know kind of the rivalry, how it started between Diddy and Suge Knight, it's like you're living under a rock, essentially. But I thought it was interesting, just Capricorn Clark's connection to Suge Knight, and that she said that Suge Knight is the father of her best friend's children. Now, she didn't name who this best friend was while she was testifying today, but she did reveal that she had previously signed with Death Row way before she had worked with Bad Boy. So when she was hired at Bad Boy, of course, Diddy was going to have a conversation with her, and the conversation, according to Capricorn Clark, was pretty tense from what she had described. So she said this conversation that they had was just on her first day of the job as a personal assistant. So this was around the 2004 time frame. And she said on that first day that she, Diddy, and one of Diddy's security guards named Paul Alford, who we have known about for a while now, he's actually referred to by other witnesses as Uncle Paulie, that Diddy, Capricorn Clark, and Uncle Paulie all went to Central Park. And Central Park's a great place, right? But this conversation that was had at Central Park, not a great place, or not coming from a great place, according to Capricorn Clark's testimony. So she had explained that she went over to the park and that she was kind of describing Uncle Paulie's demeanor as menacing, and she even described him kind of as a linebacker when describing just the size of him. And she said that around this time that Diddy had told her that he would have her killed if she had anything to do with Suge Knight. And this was kind of a moment in the courtroom where a lot of people were just like, oh my God, what? Because when you're seeing Diddy inside that courtroom, he's very toned down. He looks kind of like a Huxtable, maybe possibly a Mr. Rogers, where he's just in a sweater, he's in an undershirt, he's just wearing slacks. Like, he's not the Diddy that we've seen on red carpets. He's not the Diddy we've seen on social media. So he looks toned down inside the courtroom. So to hear that he had allegedly wanted her killed because she had this previous relationship with Suge Knight, it was kind of just like a, oh my goodness moment a little bit, because this was kind of the first time we were hearing about this. But according to Capricorn Clark, when this alleged threat was being made, that Diddy appeared very calm during this. And again, Uncle Paulie was calm, and Capricorn Clark has said Uncle Paulie didn't say anything when Diddy had allegedly made this threat. Instead, Uncle Paulie remained calm. He was stoic. But Capricorn responded to the threat saying, we'll have to see. And Capricorn admitted while she was on the stand that she should have been more transparent. You know, hindsight's always 20/20, but she said she should have been more transparent just about the overall relationship with Suge Knight, because again, Suge Knight and Diddy go way back, and not in necessarily a good way either. You know, they started off as kind of colleagues in a way, or at least cordial from my understanding of it, and then things escalated. Obviously, Suge Knight used to kind of be on the West Coast side with Death Row, whereas Biggie and even Diddy represented the East Coast side, and that was Bad Boy, of course, that we know. And so then while we were inside the gallery and while we were inside the courtroom, we see a bunch of exhibit photos. And the exhibit photos are photos we've seen before. They were photos of D-Rock. D-Rock was a good friend of Biggie Smalls, according to Capricorn Clark. And this is something that we've known as well, too, because D-Rock was the one who had driven down another assistant to try to find Suge Knight that one time. So everything just kind of intertwines with itself. But really, I think the takeaway is just this beef carried on and on forever. And so then we saw another exhibit photo, this one of Ruben. Ruben is going to be kind of an important figure later on in Capricorn Clark's testimony. But we saw a photo of Ruben, a.k.a. Rue. He also goes by that, and that's actually D-Rock's little brother. Came and was hired after Capricorn Clark. And then we saw an exhibit photo of Roger Bonds, and he started around the same time as Capricorn Clark, and that, again, is another security guard. So these photos we've seen as government exhibits already. But then Capricorn Clark was asked, you know, did you observe Diddy with a gun? And she had mentioned one particular incident, and this was during the kidnapping incident. And then she had also discussed that there was a time before that Diddy had, he was doing kind of this like press events with 50 Cent, and that there was kind of this back and forth between 50 Cent and Diddy, because we know their beef also goes back years and years and years. But according to Capricorn Clark, when she was on the stand today, Diddy, who she refers to as Puff or Puffy while she's on the stand, told Chris Lighty, who used to work with 50 Cent, that I don't like the back and forth, I like guns. And that was kind of a way that the prosecution, I felt like, was really kind of coming out swinging as far as just, what did you observe with Diddy under your employment? What were the threats that were made? They really just kind of went at it right off of the bat.
No, look, for a racketeering conspiracy charge where prosecutors are saying that he operated a criminal enterprise that was engaged in a pattern of illegal activity and there are all these underlying crimes, they have to convince this jury that he's essentially almost like a mafia boss, right? That he's a gang leader. And the more they can say who he surrounded himself with, and there was violence and threats and drugs and guns and bodyguards, that's how they build it up. Now, we'll get more into the specifics of the underlying charges they're trying to prove with racketeering, but just to give everybody a sense of what we're talking about, didn't she also describe having to take a lie detector test, this over missing jewelry, which she wouldn't be the first witness, the first former employee of Combs to testify in this trial about a lie detector test.
Right, we got a little snippet of it from David James's testimony last week, but now we're hearing it from, like you said, Jesse, another employee, this one being of Capricorn Clark. So according to Capricorn Clark, she said that she was actually accused within the first few months of her employment, accused of stealing a watch and stealing a necklace, stealing essentially this jewelry, very expensive jewelry, by the way, that was on a loan from this man named Jacob the jeweler. And so Puff, or Diddy, I should say, actually gave Capricorn Clark the jewelry to kind of hold. Again, it was on loan around this time. And Capricorn said that she had called security and told Diddy that his jewelry was missing. Diddy had told Capricorn Clark at this time to go back with Uncle Paulie, again, the same Uncle Paulie who was in Central Park that one day. And Capricorn described being questioned by Uncle Paulie for a long period of time, essentially just about where this jewelry was. She said that Uncle Paulie even came to her home, searched her belongings, something that David James had testified to last week, that his hotel room was searched through by Diddy's security guards. And then we see an exhibit photo of Bad Boy Worldwide, and this later became their new corporate offices. But around the time, it was essentially just kind of this empty building, and I think it's from the address, because I can't have my phone on with me during federal court, but I think from the address, it's not too far from where our Law and Crime offices are now. But as far as just what had happened in this particular instance, she said she arrived to these offices. Again, these were supposed to be the new corporate headquarters, but at the time that she had went, it was essentially just this abandoned building. And when she went inside, someone locked her in from the outside, so there was no way for her to leave. So she said she was brought up to the 6th floor by Uncle Paulie, and she was met with another man. And she didn't know this man's name. She could not identify what his name was, but really just kind of spoke about his features. And she explained that he was a very wide-set man and that he was equivalent to about 6 of her. So just kind of emphasizing that he was just a heavy-set man who was smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee, I guess, in this office on the 6th floor. And so this man had told her, because again, we don't know his name, had told her that she needed to take a lie detector test. And if she didn't take the test, the biggest thing was that she said she would be thrown into the East River. Now, there was an objection that had happened after she had said this statement during her testimony, and then they had gone to a sidebar. And of course, when the sidebar happens, there's a bunch of white noise going off. It kind of sounds like static, and so we can't hear what all is discussed in the sidebar. They're kind of huddled over into the corner, so it's unclear exactly what the defense was kind of objecting to, and just the details kind of surrounding it. And so then when they get back from the sidebar, Capricorn Clark has asked whether or not she felt like the man was being serious as far as this threat goes to take this lie detector test. And Capricorn said that the man was being very serious and said she was petrified during this whole incident, and said that she ended up just going ahead and taking the test. And so she was asked questions like, did you steal? Did you come up with a plan to steal? And the results came back inconclusive. The results were inconclusive, she had said, because the lie detector administrator wasn't getting a good reading of her because she was so nervous, she was so jittery. And you know, like when I was younger, I took like a lie detector test because my dad worked as a police officer. And really, like, if you are asked a question like, did you clean your room, and you get nervous, it does kind of spike up. So that I can say is my only experience taking a lie detector test. But from what Capricorn Clark was kind of explaining while on the stand is just how petrified and nervous she was. But she said she was left in this deserted office the entire day and just kept on taking these lie detector tests all day, unable to leave. And Uncle Paulie was the one who told her she cannot leave. And so, again, the door was locked from the outside, and she was able to leave after Paulie essentially let her leave. And the next day, Paulie came back, got her again, and she went back to that exact same location, took the lie detector test over again and over again and over again. And she said that she had to come back and do this lie detector test 5 times. And these lie detector tests, according to Capricorn Clark, lasted essentially all day. And she said the reason she kept coming back and doing these tests was because she wanted to prove her innocence. She said that she didn't take anything from anyone, and she didn't go and tell the police because she had worked under an NDA. There was an objection. That objection was sustained, so the jury, won't be able to hear that part. But she said during these long days, long hours of taking this lie detector test that Diddy didn't check up on her during this time. And then after the 5 days was over, Uncle Paulie told her that she could go back to work that next Monday, or that following Monday, I should say. But she doesn't even know where the jewelry was or if it was even ever located. And she said she continued to work for Diddy after the time, even though, he had kept making her do this lie detector test so quickly into her new position.
Hey everybody, this is another Law and Crime legal alert. If you received Depo-Provera birth control shots and were later diagnosed with a brain or spinal tumor called meningioma, you may be eligible for a lawsuit. That's right, Morgan & Morgan is investigating claims that patients weren't properly warned about this risk. It's free to check, just takes a few minutes. You don't pay unless they win. So scan the QR code on screen, click the link below, or head over to forthepeople.com/LCDepo to see if you qualify. The Sean Diddy Combs federal racketeering and sex trafficking trial took quite a turn today as celebrity stylist Deontay Nash testified that the music mogul allegedly beat his former girlfriend Cassandra Ventura until she bled, controlled every aspect of her life, and even made chilling threats. He even testified he jumped in and tried to stop one of these attacks. And by the way, that's only part of the testimony from today. There was a lot more we got to get into. I'm going to be breaking it down with our Law and Crime reporter Elizabeth Milliner, who is inside that courtroom for every minute of the action. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. The federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs took another dramatic turn today, day 11 of testimony. And what testimony we had. Explosive testimony from this celebrity stylist, Deontay Nash, who described alleged threats, physical abuse, controlling behavior by the hip-hop mogul toward his former girlfriend, Cassandra Ventura, even himself. And I think, by the way, this was brought up during our live show on Law and Crime's YouTube channel. I think this was brought up by Ashley Banfield quite well, that Nash might be the only person who's testified so far that he actually intervened in the alleged abuse of Sean Combs. We're going to get into that, but that is definitely something to make note of. And by the way, he's not the only person who testified. We heard a lot of testimony regarding the circumstances of Kid Cudi's testimony from last week. Remember that? Kid Cudi testified that he was a victim of his house being broken into, his car being set on fire, that he had been dating Cassandra Ventura, seemingly during this breakup that she had with Sean Combs, that he was the victim of retaliation at the hands of Sean Combs. And this is all important for the racketeering charge, right? The more that the prosecution can make the point that Combs was this essential mafia boss, that he was heading up this criminal enterprise that was involved in a whole series of crimes, that's how you get to racketeering. A criminal enterprise that has all of these underlying crimes: forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, sex trafficking. Kid Cudi, pivotal witness for what I would say is multiple predicate crimes. And then we heard from officials today regarding these specific events surrounding Kid Cudi. So we have a lot to get into, a lot of dramatic testimony. For that, I want to bring on Law and Crime's reporter Elizabeth Milliner, who has been inside that courtroom every day of trial. Elizabeth, so good to see you. Thanks for coming here on set.
I know, I'm in studio today. Can you believe it?
I love it. I love it. I always see you across outside the courthouse, but I'm happy to have you here.
Yes.
Now, before we even get into the testimony today, including of Deontay Nash, there was something that happened before the jury was even brought in, before testimony even began. What happened?
Yeah, so I feel like some of the most interesting things that happen in this trial are always the arguments outside of the presence of the jury. That's really when you see the attorneys in action, and really, honestly, when they're showing kind of their personality more, not playing it up so much to the jury. And so there was kind of a big ruling that was made outside of the jury presence before testimony had started today, and it regarded Kid Cudi. So there was this defense motion that they were trying to strike this last little bit of testimony where Kid Cudi essentially implied that he had believed Diddy was lying about having anything to do with the Molotov cocktail that was lodged into his car, having anything to do with the break-ins in his home. And so there was this moment at the Soho House where they had a meeting, they met up, they shook hands. So the prosecution had asked Kid Cudi, what did you make of just this meetup? And what did you think that Diddy was implying when he had said that he didn't know what he was talking about when he was asked straight up just about the Molotov cocktail, and that Kid Cudi had believed that Diddy was lying about this. And it was kind of a moment towards the end of his testimony, because this was a moment that we got to at the redirect. So this was after the cross-examination, where a lot of people were just like, oh, wow. So he definitely believes. It was kind of another aha moment, if you will. And so the defense objected to this. The defense wanted this little piece that Kid Cudi was talking about just struck from the record. They didn't want this to go to the transcript when the jury goes into deliberation. And so the judge actually denied the defense's motion, and he had said that the door was actually opened for this line of questioning, for this type of response under the cross-examination. And so that was a big ruling that he had made earlier this morning.
Little inside baseball, as much as they tell a jury to disregard a comment, once it's made, you can't ring the bell. It's very hard to tell a jury not to consider that, which, by the way, we have something to talk about when it comes to a specific piece of testimony that the judge instructed the jury today to disregard. We'll get to that in a minute. But we had Officer Christopher Ignacio of the LAPD testify, and he was the one who responded to the alleged break-in at Kid Cudi's home. And this is somebody who's a veteran. So he'd been with the department about 16 years. When he responded to Kid Cudi's home, what was that response like?
Yeah, so this response happened on December 22nd of 2011. This is a couple days before Christmas, around the holiday time. And so he was responding to a home up in the Hollywood Hills. The address was an address we were all very familiar with. Why? Because it was Kid Cudi's address. So he said that he was dispatched around 8:20 in the morning about a possible suspect stare down. And Ignacio had said that he had responded with police lights, with sirens, just kind of the whole shebang. And so then we see an exhibit photo of Kid Cudi's front door. So then we know, of course, he had been responding to Kid Cudi's house. And Officer Ignacio was explaining that the neighborhood that Kid Cudi had lived in at the time, it was kind of situated above the Hollywood Hills. It has narrow views and kind of windy roads. But he said that he had noticed a black Escalade. And that to me really stuck out, because this is kind of towards the beginning of his testimony. That stuck out to me because yesterday when Capricorn Clark was testifying, she testified that Diddy, Ruben, Diddy's security guard, and Capricorn Clark all went to Kid Cudi's home in what? A black Escalade, and that they proceeded to even chase down Kid Cudi when he had been responding to this break-in that had happened at his home. But Officer Ignacio, while he testified today, said that he didn't notice any of the passengers inside the vehicle because the windows were heavily tinted, kind of like a limo would be tinted, just very dark, so he couldn't see inside. But he said that he did catch a license plate number, and this license plate was for 6LKN013. He said he didn't pull the car over at this particular time because there was no crime at the time. But then he starts to kind of get into just what had happened once he's on Kid Cudi's property, that his partner jumped over a fence, let him in. He noticed the door was open, but no one was home. Then he had noticed some unwrapped gifts, which I thought was pretty interesting because Kid Cudi had testified that these gifts were wrapped when he was testifying last week, that these gifts were wrapped. And then when he came home, that these gifts were unwrapped. They were in the kitchen area. And then more detectives kind of arrived. They searched the area. But I think one thing that was pretty interesting that stood out to me during Christopher Ignacio's testimony is that he didn't mention the dog. And I think the dog was kind of a big thing, according to Kid Cudi, because Kid Cudi had explained that he normally lets his dog kind of roam around. However, when he returned home for this break-in, that his dog was locked in the bathroom and his dog was jumpy and nervous after this incident. And so that was one point that just wasn't discussed today during testimony, which I found pretty interesting. So as far as Officer Ignacio, he had said that they had exited the home and noticed that same black Escalade coming back down the hill. It was driving a lot slower, around 10 to 15 miles per hour, which I think also kind of goes to Capricorn Clark's testimony, right? Because she was explaining that while in that Escalade with Diddy and with Ruben, the security guard, that they had chased down Kid Cudi once they saw that he was coming back down to his home. And I think this kind of helped verify a little bit that possibly maybe this did happen. And obviously during the cross, there was kind of holes poked into that specific aspect. But later Kid Cudi arrives to the home. Officer Ignacio under cross kind of explained that Kid Cudi was pretty flustered by this incident. But I think kind of the biggest moment, where there were two big moments. One, that this was a trespass report. So it wasn't reported as a burglary. It wasn't reported as a robbery. It was just simple trespassing. But he said that he entered this license plate of the black Escalade into the system. So then we see an exhibit photo, and this is where the direct examination kind of ends. We see this DMV vehicle registration information for that same license plate number that I had just said, and it was registered not to Sean Combs particularly, not to Capricorn Clark, not to Ruben, but it was registered actually to Bad Boy Productions. And then the direct examination ends. So I think a lot of people, including myself, were just kind of like, wow, this car was registered to Bad Boy.
That's a bombshell.
Yes.
That's a bombshell. Because to make the allegation that Sean Combs or his team of associates, particularly when you're talking about a racketeering conspiracy, he can't do it alone. The allegation is that he used his associates and bodyguards to facilitate crimes and cover them up. If you have a car that's registered to Bad Boy at the scene of a break-in, burglary, trespassing, what you want to call it, that corroborates Kid Cudi's account and makes this a lot more digestible for the jury. So it's a big, big moment. And by the way, Capricorn Clark being in that car goes to the kidnapping, which is one of the predicate crimes that the prosecution is hoping to prove in order to convict Sean Combs of racketeering conspiracy. So obviously a big witness, Mr. Ignacio. The cross-examination by the defense was interesting. Talk to us about who conducted the cross and where exactly were they going? What did they say?
Oh, yeah. Well, who conducted the cross? It was none other than Brian Steele himself. So he was really kind of back in his element, really cross-examining Christopher Ignacio. And so right off the bat, Brian Steele goes in and is like, well, this incident happened 13 and a half years ago. You need your memory refreshed, right? Officer Ignacio responds, yes. This case had no value to you until you appeared in court. Officer Ignacio agreed. And then later they kind of talk about the report, that the report was made by his partner, which Ignacio kind of verified. So Steele was coming off just a little bit aggressive during this cross-examination, or maybe he was just truly in his element, kind of coming off super confident while cross-examining this police officer. And so then we get into a map of Kid Cudi's home, and this is kind of like a generic Google map exhibit. And I think it was interesting that the defense was kind of trying to point out just where Kid Cudi's home lied in the Hollywood Hills, just as far as the route that people would take, kind of implying that maybe this Escalade just got caught at a dead end, because there were a lot of dead ends over there, according to the defense. And so I think the defense was definitely trying to play up that it's possible that this black Escalade, or who might have allegedly been inside this car, caught at a dead end, and maybe that's the reason that he had seen the black Escalade once again. But
which, by the way, is something to say.
Yes, exactly.
Right? So a car registered to Sean Combs. Oh, it wasn't stopped there. It just happened.
Yeah, it just happened to be at Kid Cudi's home.
This time.
Yes, exactly. Maybe got caught at a dead end. And then it was interesting, too, because even when Brian Steele was on the stand, he was like, did you see a black Porsche, because he calls a Porsche, next to an Escalade? And Ignacio responds, I don't remember. Did you see a car chase? Or you didn't see a car chase, did you? And Ignacio responded, no, he didn't. He asked if a gun was involved, would you have included that in your report? Ignacio responded, yes. No one told you about a firearm? And Ignacio responded, true. The homeowner didn't mention a gun. The homeowner obviously being Scott Mescudi, aka Kid Cudi.
And by the way, this is all because these are things that Capricorn Clark and Kid Cudi had kind of testified to, right?
Yes, exactly. And especially with Capricorn Clark's testimony specifically. But I think, just kind of thinking about it possibly from a juror perspective, that if there was kind of this discussion on not to report it to police, not to say who was behind this, maybe that kind of may have explained why there was no talk about a firearm. But according to Ignacio, if there was a firearm that was mentioned, it definitely would have been included in the report. But again, Officer Ignacio wasn't the one who completed the report. It was actually his partner. He was asked whether or not he had heard about a kidnapping in the matter, and he said that he didn't hear about this kidnapping and that no one disturbed the property, and he responded no, which I think is interesting too, because if you talk about the dog being locked in the closet, I think that's kind of a disruption of the property, but that's neither here nor there. And then Steele was asking, there are no bullet holes in the wall, and he responded yes. And asking whether or not that he could have put out a BOLO report, to be on the lookout for this black Escalade, and they didn't do a BOLO alert. There wasn't any mention of threat to kill, and Ignacio confirmed that's true. And as far as mentions just of security cameras, obviously this is a big rap star at the time, still a rap star even today, and even Kid Cudi was talking about how his cameras were repositioned during this break-in, but Ignacio had said they had asked actually Kid Cudi to provide this footage. They saw the cameras, but there was no filming of this incident. And so Ignacio explained that Kid Cudi, when he was responding to his home break-in, that he was a little flustered. And then they ended the cross-examination with just the time frame of when this dispatch call came in. So as we know from Kid Cudi's testimony, he explained that Cassie had called him around 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and the call for the dispatch for police didn't come in until 8:20, and so they ended the cross-examination there. There was no redirect, and the witness was off the stand.
A former employee of Sean Diddy Combs, testifying under the pseudonym Mia, told jurors that he sexually assaulted her, controlled where she went, even subjected her to violent outbursts, and also made her work around the clock on extended release Adderall. I'm going to talk with Law&Crime's reporter Elizabeth Milliner to get the scoop on all of the harrowing details that she shared. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. What a day in court. What a day in court in the Sean Combs criminal trial. So before we even get to the idea that a new alleged victim has taken the stand using the pseudonym Mia, and there's a lot to get into there, there was something that happened at the beginning of the day. A witness, a celebrity stylist, finished their testimony, and it was really interesting what the defense did. So I'm not going to do this alone. I want to bring on Elizabeth Milliner, Law&Crime's reporter, who has been in that courtroom not only today for every minute of the testimony in action, she has been there every day of this trial. Elizabeth, always so good to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know people look forward to your recaps. We got to start with Deontay Nash, an important witness who testified earlier in the trial, testified about the abuse that he allegedly observed of Cassie Ventura, testified about intervening, trying to stop Sean Combs from attacking her, also testified that he observed threats that were made against Cassie Ventura, but he was under cross-examination by Xavier Donaldson today. What was the theme of the cross-examination? Were they trying to hit on any kind of discrepancies or inconsistencies in his testimony? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it was interesting kind of what the direction of the cross-examination was really going to. Even on day one of Deontay Nash's cross-examination, that trickled into day two, which is today. And so even right off the bat this morning, Xavier Donaldson asked Deontay Nash, "Good morning, how are you?" And Deontay responded, "Blessed." So I was like thinking, okay, how's the mood gonna be during this testimony? But it really was kind of a little bit of all over the place. For example, we saw a text message exhibit that was taken down pretty quickly. None of us in the gallery were able to kind of even comprehend what was kind of going on, what the point of this message was to be shown to Deontay and then just be brought down just immediately afterwards. Then he was asked a little bit about Capricorn Clark, and specifically in 2011, and Deontay was asked whether or not she was kind of the creative, and Deontay responded that she didn't necessarily work on Cassie's mixtape around this time. Then they kind of get into Cassie wearing her hair in a certain style at the MTV VMA Awards. It was a green, she had like this neon green hair color, and if you remember from Capricorn Clark's testimony on Tuesday, she kind of took ownership of making Cassie into that look. For example, it's pretty much saying that she was trying to bring Cassie into the future. This was coming after Cassie had been rocking the kind of half-shaved head for a while, and so Capricorn Clark, while on the stand, was like, "Oh, this is my idea. I wanted to bring her into the next level, into the future, and give her a new look." Whereas Deontay, when he was on the stand today, was just explaining that this was a group decision that was made amongst a lot of people within the staff. So then we kind of get into a little bit more of what had happened to Cassie as far as the bed framing incident. For example, Deontay Nash was asked, "You spoke with prosecutors about this incident?" And Deontay responded, "Yeah. You didn't tell prosecutors that Diddy kept kicking Cassie while she was bleeding?" And Deontay responded, "I gave as little as possible. I only answered what I was asked." And again, Deontay made it very clear at the beginning of his testimony that he didn't want to be testifying in the first place. He was subpoenaed to testify testify, didn't want to be doing this, something that a lot of other witnesses have also said the same thing about. Then we kind of get into the 2015 revolt conference that happened in Miami. And this was kind of a big issue this morning, or not a big issue, but this was kind of a big point because it kind of has to do with Michael B. Jordan in a sense, because Deontay said he was over in Miami styling Little Kim while Cassie was over in South Africa with Mia shooting the movie Honey 3, and that was the same movie that Michael B. Jordan was in. And so Deontay was asked, was she able to do movies while signed to Bad Boy? And he responded, sometimes. He was asked, Mr. Combs signed a contract to let Cassie do this movie, and Deontay responded, correct. And so it seems like Deontay was kind of interrupting Xavier Donaldson at some points, and he just came out of the blue and just said, yeah, I was trying to hook her up with Michael B. Jordan, because if Diddy's doing his thing in Miami, why can't Cassie do her thing over in South Africa? And what was Diddy's thing that he was doing in Miami? Well, he was spotted with Gina. And Deontay revealed that it wasn't Deontay who told Cassie this information, that it was actually another stylist who had relayed to Cassie something along the lines of, oh, girl, you look good with Diddy today. And Cassie's like, what are you talking about? Because Cassie's over in South Africa shooting a movie, and the person that was actually being referred to was actually Gina. And again, it was a point where Cassie had said while she was testifying that Gina was really kind of this point of contention between herself and Diddy because she was always around, whereas Deontay was kind of explaining that Cassie, really didn't care about Gina and everything like that, because at the time they two were broken up, and Cassie did kind of verify that too. And so Deontay was asked about Cassie's other relationships, about dating an NBA player and a football player, and there was kind of a moment in the courtroom today where Deontay was asked, Cassie was in a relationship with Andre Branch, and Deontay was like, no, I don't think so. And then he paused for a second and was like, oh, wait, you mean the cute football player? And then all the courtroom pretty much erupted with laughter. So it was kind of one of those moments where Deontay's personality really kind of shined through during the testimony, maybe something that doesn't necessarily translate as well to the transcript. And so we saw another exhibit photo of a text message between Deontay and Cassie about Michael B. Jordan, where Deontay essentially was saying, be calm and ignore, pretty much saying that Cassie wasn't pressed about Gina, and that Cassie and Deontay would go out together to restaurants while she was on a break with Diddy, because I think the defense was trying to imply that Cassie was just partying all over and was doing things outside of Diddy's presence. But Deontay was kind of like, no, we're calm people. For the most part, we just go out to restaurants together, and that's what we kind of do. And so then we kind of get into the post-Intercontinental Hotel incident in March of 2016, where we see a text exhibit between Deontay and Cassie around that time, and Deontay's kind of commenting on just the look of her face, that type of sort. And I think what the defense was trying to do was kind of point out that Cassie didn't have maybe bruises or injuries to her face while the two were exchanging these text messages. And for the most part, it seemed like from the messages that Cassie was giving, or Cassie was sending to Deontay, she was saying things like, this guy's tripping, we did the same drugs, and I'm trying to keep him from embarrassing himself. And Deontay was like, well, just fake sleep. Then the defense tried to kind of point out that, didn't Cassie say she didn't want to go to this hotel during this incident? And Deontay responded, well, not this time, but she has told me before that she hasn't wanted to go to these hotels. Then they kind of talk about Cassie keeping secrets from her friends, whether or not she was revealing to her friends just every ounce of her life, including points about whether or not she had told Deontay that she was kind of participating in these freak-offs with other men, and that these videos that were threatened to be released, that they involved other men and not particularly Diddy being shown on these videos. And so I think the big sticking point that the defense was trying to do was just that Cassie was keeping secrets from Deontay. And Deontay kind of countered that, where he was like, look, I don't tell my friends every single thing and aspect of my life, but that's just what we do. We're not up each other's behind in a sense, like that they kind of let each other breathe, and they don't tell every single ounce and facet of each other's lives. But from the defense perspective, it seemed like they were trying to drive home the point that Cassie kept secrets, and she wasn't very forthcoming with people even very close to her.
So a couple things there. First of all, when you mentioned Gina, just so everybody knows, we believe that to be alleged victim number 3 in this case, who, by all accounts, and we did a previous sidebar on it, may not testify in this case. There has been difficulty, it seems, from the prosecution getting a hold of her or attorney. There was a back and forth last week between defense counsel and prosecutors about whether or not she's even a part of the case anymore. Just want to make that clear, and the defense has been really hitting upon the fact that Gina They've been characterizing Combs' relationship with Cassie not as one of a victim and a sex trafficker, but a domestic violence relationship, that there was a tumultuous relationship, it was a toxic relationship, it was filled with love, anger, jealousy, but that he wasn't controlling her or beating her up to force her into these coerced sexual performances, but really this was just a really bad relationship. And I agree. I think what they've really been trying to do is assassinate Cassie's character, that she's not trustworthy, that she is shady, that she manipulated Combs, that she can't be trusted. So I see what they're doing here. There was a part of his cross-examination where they talk about his connection to Cassie and that she didn't reveal these alleged freak-offs to him, until years later, and that she's still in touch with him. I mean, I even heard testimony today, that he helped design or style what she wore to court. So talk to us a little bit more about what she told him regarding the alleged freak-offs, and also that they're still in touch, which I guess goes to his credibility, right? The defense would say he's doing anything and saying anything to protect her.
Right, and that was something that Deontay revealed on day one of his testimony, that he does still keep in touch with Cassie. He was the one who actually revealed to open court yesterday that Cassie had delivered her third child with her now husband, Alex Fine. And so as far as just the messages go between Cassie and Deontay, even while she was testifying, even a little bit after she was testifying, it really had to do with what Deontay does best, and that's styling. Essentially, Cassie was reaching out to Deontay because she didn't know what to wear to court, because again, she was very pregnant around this time, about 8.5 months, and nothing was fitting her. And that was what Deontay was kind of explaining as far as why the two were communicating, especially while Cassie was on the stand, while she was testifying in court during week one of trial. And then during the cross-examination, the defense was trying to kind of point out that Cassie was keeping this huge secret from Deontay, again, that being her stylist, but also one of her very, very close friends and best friends too, just essentially about why she was participating in these freak-offs. And Cassie didn't actually reveal this to Deontay until 2013. And so the defense was like, so from 2008 to 2013, Cassie just didn't say anything to you, kept this big secret. And Deontay was explaining that, yeah, it was okay. And I was thinking to myself, maybe she just didn't reveal it because likely she was embarrassed, or likely how often do we talk about our intimate moments and every single detail of them with our best friends. And so I thought that was an interesting point that the defense was trying to go for, as far as, again, kind of going into the tune of Cassie keeping secrets and being secretive about her life. But maybe it was just a situation where she didn't feel comfortable sharing this, or maybe didn't think other people would understand. And so, yes, the defense was definitely trying to kind of say that Cassie was keeping this secret for years on end, and that she didn't reveal this until years into their friendship, as opposed to, I guess, telling Deontay right off the bat.
Wasn't there also a point of cross-examination when they were challenging Nash about still staying in touch with Sean Combs? So the guy that allegedly not only attacked Cassie, but he also testified that he was on the receiving end of physical abuse as well. So didn't he stay in touch with Sean Combs?
Right. He did stay in touch with Sean Combs even after he stopped his professional relationship with Puffy, or Puff as he calls him on the witness stand. But yes, towards the end of his cross-examination, that's when the defense was bringing out Deontay's text messages to Diddy. Specifically, we saw text messages between Diddy and Deontay in October of 2018. So this was after Cassie and him broke up. Cassie was already dating Alex Fine, her now husband at this point. But I think also, interestingly enough, this was after the alleged rape that had happened, and unclear whether or not Cassie revealed that part to Deontay. That wasn't talked about during cross-examination or any of his testimony today or even yesterday. And so Diddy asked Deontay to call him. He said, "Call me, no drama." Deontay responded, "I just got here. She's sleeping." And Diddy responded something along the lines of, because again, these text messages go so fast sometimes, that Diddy asked, "Can you wake her up? Is she okay?" And I think the defense was trying to imply that Diddy still was caring about Cassie, was still checking up on her. But Deontay reached out to Diddy, or Puffy, Puff Daddy, just about Kim Porter, who is the mother of some of his children, after her death that also happened in 2018, and that Deontay had reached out to Diddy after Andre Harrell's death, and that was Diddy's mentor, somebody that really kind of showed Diddy the ropes in a sense professionally as he was kind of coming up. I think he had even interned for Andre Harrell at some point and then worked with him before Diddy went off to do Bad Boy and his own record label. Then we saw messages from January 19th of 2019 again. So we're months after Cassie and Diddy broke up with one another, but Diddy was upset with Deontay that he being Deontay, didn't tell Diddy that Cassie was seeing the trainer. And who is the trainer? The trainer is Alex Fine, that being Cassie's now husband. And so Diddy was still asking at this point and during this text message, asking how Cassie was doing, and essentially was saying something along the lines of, it's all good between you and me, bro, and putting some laughing emojis in there. But it seemed like he was kind of upset that Cassie was seeing, and he referred to Alex Fine as the trainer. And so then we see another exhibit, this one the year after, so May 9th of 2020, where Deontay sent a message to Diddy saying, I love you, brother. If you need anything, I got you. And I thought it was interesting that they brought up this particular message, right? Because Deontay has talked at length about witnessing Diddy being violent towards Cassie, even at points being violent towards him himself. But still at some points, Deontay was reaching out to Diddy to say everything's all good and there's love between the two. And I think that's something that the defense has done pretty often, where they're kind of using other people's text messages to show that people still, in a way, cared about Diddy and that he wasn't this mean, angry monster. He was just kind of in this bad relationship because people were still reaching out to him even after he did all these horrible things. And so that was kind of towards the end of the cross-examination, right before Donaldson had asked Deontay essentially about Cassie keeping secrets and that sort.
The former Diddy assistants who say they were threatened, abused, underpaid, and even one who claims she was sexually assaulted, are they going to be the downfall of the rap mogul? Their testimony is explosive and so important to this sex trafficking and racketeering case. We are going to go through what they had to say and how it fits into the overall charges. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, we're back. Another day in Sean Combs' criminal sex trafficking, racketeering, prostitution trial. We have another recap of today's testimony. This is the continued testimony of alleged victim Mia, testifying under a pseudonym. There is a lot to break down with respect to her direct testimony, her cross-examination by the defense. Remember yesterday, she testified that she was verbally, physically, sexually assaulted by Sean Combs, goes to potentially forced labor as the underlying crime of racketeering. Remember, prosecutors have to prove at least 2 underlying crimes of racketeering. Forced labor is one of them. I also think her testimony goes to this pattern of criminal activity for racketeering. And her testimony, of course, helps corroborate Cassie Ventura's claims of physical abuse by Sean Combs, Cassie being victim number 1 in this case. So what did she say today? Well, I'll tell you what, before we even get to Mia's testimony, one other thing you might have been seeing in the news, got to address. So it came out today that President Donald Trump, who seems to have been friends with Sean Combs through the years, they've been photographed together, he had a statement today. It seems he was asked, would he ever be open to pardoning Sean Combs if he's ultimately convicted of these federal crimes. What did he say? Well, he said, I know people are thinking about it. I know that they're thinking about it. I think people have been very close to asking. First of all, I'd look at what's happening, and I haven't been watching it too closely, although it's certainly getting a lot of coverage. I haven't seen him. I haven't spoken to him in years. It's different. You become a much different person when you run for politics and you do what's right. I could do other things, and I'm sure he'd like me, and I'm sure other people would like me, but it wouldn't be as good for our country. As we said, our country's doing really well because of what we're doing, so it's not a popularity contest, so I don't know. I would certainly look at the facts. If I think somebody was mistreated, whether they like me or don't like me, it wouldn't have any impact on me. Now, not to get too political, but as we know, the president has been making a lot of pardons recently, although this one feels very different. Although he was a little ambiguous in what he would do, this one, out of all the pardons he's been issuing recently, this one feels kind of different. These are violent allegations. These are sexual abuse allegations. There is an argument that whether or not Sean Combs is even guilty of these federal crimes, there's a lot that's been documented about domestic violence in videos and photographs and testimony. So it might just be too ugly for him to pardon Combs, and what the justification would be if he's ultimately convicted of this. Sure, can side with the defense's argument that this wasn't a fair trial, that these allegations don't amount to federal crimes. But is the Diddy case one of those issues that's bipartisan? What benefit would he have to ultimately pardon Sean Combs if he's convicted of these crimes? I'm not going to get into that right now, but just something to keep note of, that there is a possibility if Sean Combs is convicted of sex trafficking, racketeering, transportation to engage in prostitution, his sentence, his conviction, there could be a pardon here. We shall see. All right, now let's get into Mia's testimony. Let's talk about what happened today. So for that, I want to bring in Law&Crime's reporter Elizabeth Milliner, who's been our eyes and our ears. She has been in that courtroom every day of this testimony, including today. Elizabeth, it's great to see you. Before we even talk about Mia, there was something interesting that happened at the beginning of the day, and not a lot of people reporting on it. Real quick, back and forth before the jury came in, there was a discussion between the attorneys and the judge over charts. And when I was listening to this or reading about it, I want to hear what you have to say about it and what happened. I think this goes to the transportation to engage in prostitution charges, which we don't talk about a lot, right? The idea that Combs allegedly transported victims and sex workers for the intent of prostitution, for sex work, right? What was the discussion about charts?
Well, it was pretty interesting, at least to me, Jesse, because I think when a lot of people hear, oh, summary charts and graphics and that type of sort, that maybe it doesn't stand out to them. Maybe it's not as interesting. But to me, what the prosecution was pretty much saying was very interesting. And so the defense originally was kind of complaining, in a sense, just about the government's summary charts, that they don't like this particular category in these charts. And that is in reference to the escort category. They specifically said one particular name today in the outside of the presence of the jury, and that was an escort named Jules. And we know Jules very well. He was the escort inside that hotel room at the Intercontinental Hotel incident in 2016, but also he was an escort that Cassie and Diddy used often during freak-offs, according to Cassie's testimony. And so the defense was essentially saying that they don't like the escort category when kind of comparing their flights and the hotel booking. And this seems like a summary chart from the government that they want to introduce as some kind of demonstrative or some piece of evidence in order to kind of make this pretty clear to the jury. And so what the defense was essentially arguing was that they don't connect that the escort necessarily went to the hotel just because that they had a flight on that exact same day. The defense pretty much said that they were simply travel records, whereas the government says, sure, we can take out the escort category, that's fine, we'll still keep the names, but the summary witness will pretty much, when they are called to the witness stand, will pretty much say that these charts are going to kind of compare the hotel date to the flight that was booked. So for example, if Cassie or Diddy had reached out to a certain person to just be like, hey, do you want to come over to LA or Miami or Vegas or New York, and then you see an escort booking a flight for that exact same day, I think the government kind of makes a strong argument that these kind of help go to count 3 and 5, and that being transportation to engage in prostitution.
Now we got to talk about alleged victim number 4, Mia, Combs' former employee, again, testifying under the pseudonym Mia. So she gets back up there, and she is continuing being questioned by the prosecution. She is their witness. This is before Brian Steele, Sean Combs' defense attorney, began the cross-examination of her. So she's testifying under direct. And my understanding is it was a lot of discussion about alleged threats that were made by Sean Combs, right?
Yeah, there were. So when Mia comes to the stand today, it was kind of the same as yesterday, where she kept her head down. She kind of had her bangs in front of her face, and she just kind of walked to the witness stand because the witnesses go to the stand before the jury is brought in for the beginning of the day. So she comes back in. Her support system is kind of behind her, as well as what we presume to be her attorneys, too, because they're normally in the suits. But she walks straight to the witness stand, takes a seat, but kind of has that same effect that she had yesterday, where she was keeping her head down from what I could see, even while on the witness stand. But I will say, Jesse, even when she was testifying today, I felt like her tone was a little different. Now, yesterday was a very heavy day. They discussed a lot during her direct testimony, at least for day one, and they really discussed a lot of heavy topics, specifically the sexual abuse allegations. She was very emotional on the stand. But I will say this about her today. She kind of spoke a little bit more with an upbeat, if I could say that word, to kind of describe her demeanor just while she was on the stand, as opposed to yesterday where she was very quiet, soft-spoken, raspy at times, and emotional. But just as far as just some of the threats that were made to her, the government kind of pointed out an incident back in October of 2015 when Mia was down in Cape Town, South Africa with Cassie while Cassie was filming a movie. And so Diddy had told her to go to South Africa, according to Mia's testimony. However, Cassie caught Diddy cheating on her. There is a video posted online. This video was with Puffy or Diddy, along with Diddy's girlfriend, Gina. And so Mia had said that Cassie was devastated by this and that Cassie stopped answering Diddy's calls. So Diddy had Christina Coram and other staff members try to get Cassie on the phone. So we see an exhibit photo from October 26th of 2015. It's a text exchange between Christina Coram and Mia. Christina Coram's like, hey, it's KK. Did you get these? PD wants to talk to you. Sorry, messenger, don't shoot. Mia's essentially saying, I tried to call him. Christina Coram said, well, you can call me first. The audio call is not completed. And then they kind of talk about how Mia was getting all these kind of incessant phone calls from not only Christina Coram, but also Diddy just trying to get in touch with her. She says that at times she was sleeping. There was a time difference. And so that was the essence of that. But even as far as threats to the job, she had kind of teased a little bit into this during her direct testimony yesterday, where she was explaining that she would get suspended and suspended without pay for issues just as simple as Diddy being mad at her and using this kind of as retribution towards her. And so she was kind of explaining that she was suspended for even oversleeping on the job because she was awake so long. Then we kind of see an exhibit photo of a notice that kind of needed some further redaction. So it went up, it went down, but we were able to kind of get the gist of it. So this was from March 11th of 2011, and it was an email from Bad Boy HR or Bashta just about Mia's suspension. And so Mia was suspended in this instance without pay, and this has happened to her before. Diddy had asked Mia to get him a lot of options for workout clothes, and she had explained that this is normally a stylist's job, but Mia did what Mia did, and she did her job. She got out all these workout clothes for Diddy, laid them all out, and I guess Diddy cursed at her and got angrier and angrier, she had said. Mia tried to point out there were other options as far as Diddy could use for workout clothes, but she explained that this just made him more irate, and Diddy was screaming, he was cursing at her, but she doesn't remember necessarily the details of the violence, but knows that something violent happened in this particular instance. And we see another exhibit, this being an email from a couple days later on March 25th of that same year. It was an email between Mia and James Cruz. This was Diddy or Puffy's manager. And James Cruz says, who's handling the tickets for the Kid Choice Awards? Because I want to bring my kids there. And Mia says, I don't know when that is, but he's currently firing me at the moment, smiley face. And while she's even kind of saying her own messages, she is kind of saying like, I don't know when that is, but he's currently firing me at the moment, smiley face. Like that was kind of her tone, which was, I felt, very different from how yesterday was. And then James Cruz had responded something along the lines of LOL, but he had said more, but you know how it goes. Everything just goes so fast. Mia responded, no, for real, and then said, sad face. Mia said, he said I talked back to him over workout clothes. So it all kind of all fell together. And then we see another exhibit from that same day, this one, an email from Mia, or excuse me, this was an email from D-Rock to Mia, where D-Rock explained what happened. And Mia said he went bat SHIT on me because he didn't see all the workout options. What he'd say, what's he saying in the car? Give me a warning before you guys come back. Because she said she didn't want to be in the space when Diddy came back because she didn't want to know, or she didn't know what type of mood he was in and potentially what type of anger that he could protrude on her. And so she said that she was worried about feeling his wrath. And in this instance, again, she was suspended without pay. And so we see another exhibit, this one from Mia, this one between Mia and Bashta, which was Bad Boy HR. And the email, again, goes by so fast, or the memo goes by so fast. But it said, on Friday, March 25th of 2011, you were suspended for 5 days. Diddy had said that she was insubordinate, and Mia had said that she wasn't being insubordinate, and that those weren't the only memos that were sent to her. They didn't include in these memos that Diddy was violent towards her. She was pretty much sad. She was confused, and that she didn't know what she did to essentially deserve this treatment in a way.
Didn't she also say that Combs had threatened to take away a TV show for her or to something regarding ABC?
Mia was explaining while she was on the stand that Diddy around this time didn't want to be doing Revolt films anymore. He kind of wanted to focus on other projects he was working on. But Mia was super excited about this particular project. It was this scripted pilot show that was supposed to go to ABC. It was pretty much about the life of being Diddy's assistant, and this was a project that she was pretty excited about working on. But after an argument between Diddy and Mia, according to her, must have did something to Diddy, and Diddy took away this project from her. And for the most part, this project never even came more into fruition beyond the development point because it never had aired. It didn't get greenlit necessarily because Diddy essentially took this project away from her. And she had explained that all she wanted to do was work in television and films, and she was super eager about this opportunity. However, this was another instance where he took things that she really worked hard for, she says, away from her.
Now, I think after reading the testimony, some of the most shocking moments came towards the end, okay? There was this back and forth about what happened after Cassandra Ventura filed her lawsuit in November 2023. This is very, very interesting because I want to keep in mind these allegations about whether or not Sean Combs or anybody in his orbit maybe was engaged in tampering with a witness or bribing a witness. Those are underlying predicate crimes for racketeering. What happened, Elizabeth, after Cassandra Ventura filed her lawsuit in November of 2023? What did Mia say?
Yeah, so to your point, Jesse, this was towards the end of her direct examination. And so, yes, they were kind of talking about Cassie's now settled federal lawsuit against Diddy. But it's interesting because Mia had explained that around this time she heard from D-Rock, and D-Rock was not Diddy's security guard at the time because, again, this is 2023. He wasn't on the job anymore. He was spending more time with his family. However, D-Rock, out of the blue, reached out to Mia. And so we see this exhibit. It's a text message between D-Rock and Mia, and this is on this is on November 30th of 2023. So I believe about a little bit more than a week after Cassie's lawsuit was settled. And so D-Rock says, "Hey, what's up, Mia?" And Mia responds, D-Rock. And that's kind of the way she was saying it, even while she was on the witness stand today. So she was like, hi, how are you? I miss you so effing much. And D-Rock had responded, a lot's been going on. I'm about to call you. And so this call happened on November 30th of 2023. When D-Rock had called Mia on that day, he was saying something to the effect of, it's crazy what's going on, said that Cassie and Diddy would fight like a normal couple. Mia said that D-Rock would witness a lot, so she kind of thought it was weird that he was talking like this. And she said it didn't even seem necessarily like him to kind of say these things. And D-Rock had told Mia that Puffy or Diddy missed her. And so Mia said that others surprisingly were kind of echoing the same thing, that this was just a normal couple situation, that this wasn't abusive or toxic, nothing to that effect, that the fights between Cassie and Diddy were just nothing more than what normal couples go through, which is interesting because even during trial, it seems like that's what the defense's perspective has been. But D-Rock had said that he was landing in Miami to go where? To Puffy's house or Diddy's house, and it was essentially to take care of Christian, who is Diddy's son. And so D-Rock said that Puffy wanted to talk to Mia, and Mia thought that Puffy or Diddy wanted her to make this public statement. So then there's an objection by the defense. That objection is sustained. Mia said that she had acted like she wanted to talk to him, but she said that she was scared to talk to him. She's recalling all this trauma that she went through, and that on that same day, and a few hours later, or just something soon to D-Rock's call, Puffy or Diddy had called her too, and Mia had explained that she threw her phone and just ran outside because just getting Diddy's message or getting Diddy's phone call was so triggering to her. That's what she had said. And so then we see another exhibit from D-Rock, and these are text messages again with Mia, but they're a couple weeks later. They're on December 5th of 2023. And D-Rock had said, your boy wants you to call him. He just called me, and Mia didn't respond to this message. Then we fast forward to February 2nd of 2024. We see another text exhibit, this one of D-Rock saying, good morning, did you speak to P? P being Puffy. He called me. Are you okay? I can't believe you aren't hitting me back. Mia responds, hi Dee, so sorry. I just finished scuba diving all day and didn't have a phone on the boat. I haven't talked to him. I don't have my phone alerts on. I called back with no answer, but Mia said she was lying. She said she didn't call Diddy back. And D-Rock had said, well, let me know. I can send you something. And Mia perceived this something to be possibly money. And Mia responded in this text message. She didn't say that she thought it was money in the text message. She said this during her testimony today, but Mia responded in the text saying, no, I didn't ask for anything. And I'm kind of paraphrasing here. She said a lot more, but again, these exhibits go by so fast. But D-Rock said, well, I'm allowed to send my sister a gift, because the two thought of each other as kind of big bro, little sister. And again, Mia thought that this gift or this little something special was money. And so the last message that we see from D-Rock is on February 3rd of 2024, where D-Rock tried to call. Mia said, hi, Dee, love you. I was on a boat all day. And then Mia was saying that she was essentially trying to play dumb, and that Diddy on that same day sent her 2 text messages. And Mia thought that Diddy was using D-Rock to make sure that Mia wasn't a threat to whatever was going on. Because by this point, Jesse, we all know that Diddy was facing kind of a number of different civil lawsuits and civil litigation right after the trickle effect from Cassie's lawsuit. So I think that from maybe Diddy's perspective, he was trying to reach out to Mia, make sure that she could maybe kind of either be back in his good graces or maybe say something along the lines of, he was a good person. It felt like that type of thing. Then we see another message, this one the following day on February 4th of 2024, but this one was from Diddy to Mia, where Diddy said, hey, Mia, it's Puff. Please let me know when you got 10 minutes to talk. Love you. Hey, I don't want to be blowing up your phone, because in between the love you and hey, I don't want to be blowing up your phone, Mia didn't respond. So in the next message, and that being 3 days later on February 7th, Diddy had responded, hey, I don't want to be blowing up your phone. Just had my memory jogged on some things. You were my right hand for years, so I just want to remember who was even around me, and it would be good to hear your voice. And Mia said that she was terrified to get these text messages. And then as they're kind of ending the direct examination, Mia said that she's not working right now. She still has PTSD, and that part's going to be stricken from the record because there was an objection from the defense. But she was saying that she still has PTSD. She says she's triggered in normal situations. She feels overwhelmed. Someone could say, hey, where are you? And they're just talking about grabbing a coffee. But from Mia's perspective, and according to her testimony today, she was explaining something just like that even just kind of makes her heart race, and she just feels triggered even as someone simply asking, hey, where are you, given everything that she had went through while on the job with Diddy. And so she says that she triple guesses everything she does. And then on the final question, the prosecutor asked, and who caused you kind of triple guess yourself? And she had ended her testimony under direct by saying, Puffy did this.
Gotta say, that timing, if true, of him reaching out to her and the way that he reached out to her, very, very interesting. Because if I recall correctly, could be wrong, I think he might have been aware, or his attorneys might have been aware, that the government had started investigating him. And if that's the case, and the prosecution can prove that, that again may help with the tampering and the bribery, if you accept that that's what a gift with D-Rock is. I think that's important for the overall narrative and also for the racketeering charge. Now, before we move into the cross, before we move into it, and the theme has been she's alleging quite the abusive situation, and Brian Steele really hit upon that based on messages that she had posted and things she said. Before we even get into the cross, didn't the prosecutor, when questioning Mia, get a little bit into that? A little bit of messages where she wrote Combs, I love you, or something of that nature? So before we even move into the cross, on direct, it seemed like they were trying to anticipate what the defense was going to get into, right?
So absolutely, Jesse. So we saw some of those text exhibits, and I do kind of agree with your point that I do think that the government was trying to get ahead of this, where, for example, we saw an exhibit email from Mia to Diddy, and this is on October 17th of 2015, where Mia had said, hey, Puff, how are you? You know I love you and would do anything for you, smiley face. I bought my own ticket with my own money to make sure that C being Cassie, was good. It's expensive to kind of keep changing my flights, and Mia was explaining even while she was on the stand that she says, I love you or love you to like pretty much everyone within the staff because she felt like these people were her family. She and Puff kind of exchanged I love yous back to one another. And so I do think that the prosecution was trying to get ahead of it. But I will say this, that when the defense came out during their cross-examination, I will say that there were a lot of kind of like head scratches within the exhibits just of what was shown by the defense versus what was shown by the prosecution. So I think the government tried their best to kind of get ahead of it as far as why Mia, after someone who had allegedly sexually assaulted her, thrown spaghetti bowls at her, had tormented her while on the job, was still saying things to the effects of love you or heart you or smiley face and heart emojis, that type of thing to their boss who by her account terrorized her while she was on the job.
And by the way, in that vein, right, that vein of this complicated relationship and how she felt about him, same conversation comes up with Cassie Ventura. Why didn't you leave? Why didn't you leave the job? Why didn't you step away? That came up during one specific trip, right? I think it was to St. Bart's. What happened there?
Yeah, so that's always the number one question when these things happen, right? Why didn't you leave? Why didn't you go? If your life was not the way you thought it would be, why did you continue to stay? But Mia explained while she was on the stand that she did try to leave in one instance, and this was New Year's Eve in 2010 going into 2011. And if you kind of know and you've been following this case, you know that New Year's Eve is a time where Puffy spends it with his kids. And in this particular trip, he actually spent it with his kids and Kim Porter on this yacht, as well as with Mia and some other staffers celebrating what was supposed to be the new year of 2011. And so Mia was explaining that it was herself, Puffy, Kim Porter, Diddy's kids, another assistant was there on this yacht that Diddy had chartered, and Diddy called Mia to come to the room to count this money in this safe. And Diddy got angry because Mia was counting the money too slow, and Mia had said that it wasn't $100, that she thought it was a lot more than that, maybe possibly thousands. And Mia said that she was in shock that he got so irate with her. He chased her out of where she was counting this money. And Diddy said something along the effects of, you better walk on water like Jesus, B-word. So while on the stand, Mia was explaining that normally security is the one that counted money. So when Diddy was yelling at her, she ran upstairs onto the third floor of this yacht because, again, Diddy has a lot of money. So, of course, there would be a third floor on a yacht. So while she's up on the third floor of this very expensive yacht, Kim Porter, the mother of some of Diddy's children, actually came up there and consoled her and tried to check on her and tell her everything was going to be okay. But then Diddy came upstairs and she being Mia, went and hid in the crew cabin. And she said that she had to get a tender boat, or I guess a boat that is kind of an extension of the yacht to kind of go back to the main island, and that the captain of this tender boat got a call that Mia had to come back, and she had to come back to the yacht. And she said that she just wanted to get away. She wanted to get out of St. Bart's, but the thing is that Diddy staff had her passport. And so staff made Mia get into this car. Puffy or Diddy comes in and calls Michelle, who was then his chief of staff, and made up this story. And Mia said that she tried to chime in, and Diddy told her to shut the F up. And Michelle told Mia, just do what Puffy says. Puffy's going to take care of her. And Mia ended up going on a plane with Diddy to Vegas. And she said she felt like she just didn't have a choice.